Shalom, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Crossing Boundaries, Global Connections and Conversations. I'm Kim, the Director of Operations at Mesri Tours, streaming from Tel Aviv, Israel. Together with me is one of our amazing co-founders, Aziz Abu Sera, the guy that said you can see my hands. Today we'll be on our episode, World at Large. We'll be joined by two wonderful women travelers. We're going to discuss their unique experiences, solo travel, and even the roles of men, the things that maybe Aziz can connect to on our episode.
This is an awesome episode because we are talking to again more of our friends from all over, and today we having two special friends. One, Paulina, who I've known now, 3-4 years, I don't know, something like that. Paulina called us to come and intern for Mejdi a few years ago, and she came and finished her internship and then decided to continue to work with us after that as a tour manager for Mejdi. But she did something unique. She ended up also working for us while being a full-time traveler. And so we will talk to her today about this choice and what does it mean to be a full-time traveler but still hold a full-time job and work from every day from literally a different place in the world. And then Ellie Cleary, who's my co-author for the book. Ellie graciously agreed to write a chapter for Crossing Boundaries because when I started writing, I realized that I can't really tell the full story. And I was specifically writing a chapter on how do you meet people when you travel. And I started writing about, and then you go and you talk to people and you get lost. And then I thought, wait a second, I wonder if my female friends can do the same thing with as much freedom or not being as worried as I am, because I'll go in the middle of the night and do stuff that I realized maybe not every woman would feel the same about it. And so I asked Ellie, who has her own blog, Soul Blog, where she writes about these things to write about it. And it's an amazing chapter. And today we'll talk also about it and about your travels and the work you're doing. So I'm happy to have you both join us, and maybe we can start with you telling us, where are you right now?
Yeah, you know that we used to start every team meeting at Mejdi, asking Paulina where she is today, because everyone was very jealous. And it kept on changing, it kept on showing us the view. And then, we'd go into that instead of talking about the usual weather. So Paulina, where are you streaming from today?
So I'm in Spain. We are I'm traveling with my brother, and we are on our way back home to Germany. Well, my home is here, but we are going back to Germany, where I'm originally from, and we are driving towards Bilbao. Yeah, and we found this beautiful river for this live show.
Yeah, a little bit of background. A few hours ago, Paulina didn't even know where she's going to be while we're interviewing her. So she found the perfect spot. Ellie, how about you? Where are you at?
So I'm actually in Scotland at the moment, working on a farm in Aberdeenshire, which definitely wasn't something that we'd planned to do a few months back. But obviously, the world has been experiencing travel interruptions and cancellations and all of that. So we had to revise our plans a bit. We're actually planning to be in India at this time, but we got stuck in the UK and very happily found a beautiful place to spend the lockdown. So it's not very warm or as beautiful as the view that Pauline has there, but we're really happy to be here.
Well, you mentioned
I just wanted to say I saw some beautiful pictures from the farm, so it's also a beautiful place.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I think you both got stuck in a place that a lot of people would love to be stuck in instead of in their home through COVID. But you did mention this world epidemic, and you said you were traveling to India. Actually, how did you? I mean, did everything happen overnight? Like, how did you decide where you're going to be and not go home?
Well, so we're actually living in Canada for the last 2 years, and we had decided to sublet out our apartment there and pack up our stuff and put it in storage. And then I had a family event here in London, so we made it as far as London, and then within a couple of days of being in London, we heard that my visa was cancelled for India. So first of all, they said that all foreign visas were suspended, basically. So we actually had the situation where Ravi, my partner, who is Indian, would have been able to go back to India, but I wouldn't have been able to go. And we didn't know how long the situation would go on. So we kind of had to make a decision. And then within a few days, they'd actually shut the borders completely, so no one could go in. So we decided that probably London wasn't the best place to be, so we looked around for opportunities, and we were very lucky that this farm here in Scotland kind of took us in. So that's the story, really. So it's amazing how we can adapt to situations as we go, but we kind of have to think on our feet, really. I think that says a lot about travel as women too.
Right. And Pauline, you had a similar story, because a couple of months ago you could have gone back to Germany, but you also found a farm to stay on for the last 2 months or so.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost been 2 months, and it was around a week before the borders actually closed. We heard rumors and we thought, okay, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna rush to get back to Germany as soon as possible, or find a place around here and even be helpful to other people? Because we thought, well, maybe they might need some help, and because people can't travel. And so yeah, we found this beautiful farm. It's a small farm, self-sufficient, and we learned a lot about permaculture. And yeah, so we also made the best out of the whole situation. And I'm glad we didn't go back to Germany, because we were in nature all the time. The same spot, I'm not used to that anymore, but yeah, it was a great experience.
Change of atmosphere. Did you have a goal in mind? I mean, did you know where you were going? Because how long have you been traveling Europe?
Well, I moved in my car around 1.5 years ago. I had been working for Majesty for around half a year already. And yeah, well, traveling around Europe, I spent most of the time in Germany, actually. So it's not that I've visited a lot of countries. I didn't even count. That's not the most important thing for me, but I got to visit a lot of places in Germany. And one of the really great things I experienced was that I saw my friends more often, who are spread all over Germany. And so many times you say, oh yeah, I'll visit you one day. And basically what I did when I moved in my car, I visited my friends and saw them every few weeks, and that was great. So yeah, I'm not just on a journey and coming back home, but I'm traveling constantly. That's my lifestyle. Yeah.
And Ellie, you were an executive in one of the largest companies, not just in the travel world, in general in the world, and you left that to start having this new lifestyle of becoming a traveler. How did that happen?
I think I would say sort of decision to leave the corporate world happened gradually. There wasn't any one thing that kind of set it off, but back in 2015, I was becoming increasingly interested in the concept of responsible travel. And at the time I was working for one of the largest online travel companies out there. So I was interested in sort of, seeing if that could be explored on a corporate level. There was sort of increasing stress in my role at the time. There was increasing headcount being added to my responsibility. And at some point I kind of reached a point where I realized that I needed to take a break. So I actually took a sabbatical to start with. I took 6 months off. And yeah, that was the point of kind of no return for me. I spent 6 months happily wandering around South Asia. So that was also my first trip to India, which from this photo here you can see is Udaipur. And that kind of introduced me to, I think, different realities. I started soultravelblog.com at the time as a kind of vehicle to meet more people that were involved in responsible tourism, which I think even in those days was less developed than it is now. Obviously now it's grown quite a lot. And through that, I started to meet some amazing companies and people. I think during that time was when I actually listened to Aziz's TED Talk for the first time. So it's kind of then surreal to actually meet him in person 2 years later. So that kind of really got me thinking. After the sabbatical, I did go back to my job, but I found that it wasn't fulfilling in terms of what I was doing, and in terms of also the limitations of, I think, driving change from inside of a company, which is ultimately there to bring maximum return on investments to its stakeholders. So it was really sort of too early to have that sort of focus on responsible tourism from within such a big company. So I kept on with what I was doing with the blog. Since then, we've also started Soul Travel India as well. As I mentioned, my partner's from India, so we help travelers to navigate that, whether it's solo female travelers, whether it's people traveling as parts of groups as well. So yeah, that's sort of been the journey. There have been times when I thought that it was impossible to kind of keep going with blogging. It's definitely, you know, a very different existence than having a secure corporate job. But every time I've doubted it, then something has come up which has really you know, supported me in the current kind of mission. So yeah, that's a bit the story.
That's amazing. I remember myself, a lot of Israelis after their army service want to go traveling, and most want to do it with friends. For me, it was clear that I was going to volunteer, and specifically I wanted to go to Africa, and none of my friends were interested. Most Israelis want to go either to South America or to India. And I couldn't persuade anyone to come with me, and it was a very difficult decision to make. I mean, to go alone to a place that I don't know, and I started building it slowly, but I'm sure that you had these same thoughts. I mean, how do I do this? How do I actually take this step? What were the main things that, I guess, held you back?
So, sorry, go on, Pauline.
No, I remember 1.5 years ago when I bought my car. It was just a regular car, a different one than I have now. And I remember the day I decided, okay, now I'm gonna be on my own. I'm gonna drive somewhere and I'm gonna sleep somewhere in nature. And at that time I was afraid of the dark. so I was driving towards a place where I thought it would be nice to spend the night. And I thought, well, okay, 30 minutes and then I'm gonna be on my own. I will need to brush my teeth and it's gonna be dark. And then, but I did it. I was already driving, so there was no way back. And that's actually my first car on the right side. You can see it's a regular minivan. I took out the chairs in the back and just slept in there, had a mattress in there. That was the start. And yeah, so I was going to that place and I just did it. I didn't have a choice. And from that point on, every day I just, whatever came, I took it and I dealt with it. So yeah, going out of my comfort zone every day. And I'm feeling that my comfort zone, it's growing bigger. So there's situations, I guess a year ago, it would be very difficult for me or even to think about doing it. And now I'm not even thinking about it anymore. So that's great to look back at.
How about you, Ellie? And maybe also, just like Pauline mentioned, and I wonder maybe later, Pauline, you can comment on that. How is it traveling alone as a woman? I mean, that's the part I personally wanted to really understand the difference. How do people respond to you? I mean, I can't imagine you telling your family, friends, I'm quitting this corporate job that pays really well, big name company and I'm gonna go and travel alone to countries that many people are afraid to go to, even not alone. Like one of your first trips was to Iran, where I'm sure many people would feel uncomfortable, will think it's scary, even though we both know that's not necessarily true, but many people would have that fear. So can you tell us a bit about that? And maybe later, Pauline, you can comment on that too.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because what Pauline talked about with being afraid of the dark, I think that so much of what holds us back in life and with travel is what's in our heads. And the fear of the unknown is so much greater than necessarily the fear of the real thing. And certainly if we're traveling to places that are substantially different in culture than what we kind of know back home or in the Western world, people will also tell you to be very afraid of it. So I think also that idea stage in the beginning, when you begin to know that you want to go somewhere, it's when you have to be quite maybe selective with your audience. I have found that when I start telling people about my plans, if I'm not 100% convinced in my head, then everyone will work against me and say, no, don't go there. It's not a good idea. I think also it's worth mentioning that, a lot of places that receive a very bad rep in the media are not necessarily more dangerous than home. If we talk about India, for instance, India has an awful reputation for sexual abuse against women. But if you look at the statistics, as of a couple of years ago, there were more cases for sexual harassment of women tourists in France than there are in India. But of course, the headlines obviously are much more, make a lot more noise than India. So there's those sorts of things. We have to, I think, be careful as travelers as to what warnings we heed. Of course, we have to do our due diligence, but if we start to read too much, and if we start to listen too much to the fears of other people, we would never do anything. So I think often, from my experience, the worst part has always been kind of getting up the nerve to go somewhere. In the book, which I've contributed to, which Aziz has written, one of my stories in there was about arriving in Iran. And I received so much negative feedback in advance to this, obviously. Iran has not a good reputation in the Western media. But what I experienced already on the plane was nothing but a warm welcome. I had families coming up to me who wanted to seat their teenage daughter next to me on the plane so that she could practice her English with me. Even at the embassy in London, I had people coming up to me and making conversations. And this picture here shows you actually my tour guide in Iran, which is Mina. So she was my tour guide for 2 weeks. And that was completely something that I didn't expect, actually, having a female tour guide during that time in a country which I think we are taught is conservative at best. So that was a really important lesson for me, to really just go out there and to see what happens. And of course we have to use our common sense, and so I think we'll talk about this later, plug into our intuition as well. But it's the hardest part is leaving your front door.
Yeah,
Paulina,
for me, first of all, I didn't have to quit my job. I was working for Majdi back then, and actually the job, I was already back in Europe. I wasn't even in Jerusalem anymore. So I thought, hey, I'm a digital nomad already, so I can travel. I'm free to travel. I'm earning money. So it was, yeah, it was the perfect fit. And of course, when I told my dad, he said, you want to live in a car and travel around on your own? That was a bit strange to him, but the good thing was my brother, he did it almost a year before me. He bought a regular car, a rooftop tent, and started living in it. So he did a bit of the work already. And he showed my parents that it's possible to do it. And then I came and said, hey, I have a job even. So there's not a problem at all. But when I decided I want to get a rooftop tent as well, my dad said, well, you cannot lock it. So he didn't really like that idea. But luckily my car that I have now, it's a bit higher. So it's not that easy to get up here. But yeah, as I told earlier, it's if you start just doing things, you are not afraid anymore of those situations. And of course, I'm not naive. For example, I'm usually not spending more than one night in the same spot. And also when people are passing by, I'm looking in their faces, trying to read their minds, kind of. And yeah, and with all those things that you can do to protect yourself, I feel safe, relatively safe. Of course, I've been in situations that were not that nice, and I dealt with it, and it made me stronger also. And it also helps me predict when I get in similar situations. I can prevent situations from happening. And yeah, so I'm growing with every situation, positive or negative, both. Yeah.
Do you feel that within that suspicion from new people that you're still able to create some sort of sense of community when you're getting to a new place?
Yes, but the thing is, I was working for Matchd all the time, so that was a very different kind of traveling. I was not focused completely on getting to know people, but criteria, for example, for a place to stay were, how is the internet connection? Because I need to work. And then, yeah, so this is, for example, the perfect fit. I have a beautiful view, I have the birds, I have perfect internet connection, so I could start working right away. So yeah, it's, as I said, it's a different kind of travel, and I was working, not, I could sometimes work at night as well, so I had flexible hours, but in general I was working some hours every day. And so the only difference was that I didn't need to go somewhere to an office and look at a white wall, but instead I had a nice view when I was looking up. That's what I really enjoyed about it. But a lot of people say I've been on vacation for 1.5 years. That's not true. I've been working, yeah, and enjoyed it. Yeah.
What advice would you give to female travelers? Um, how do you prepare? I mean, we talked about how safety issues is a perception. It's not always really what we read in the media isn't always true, but there are safety concerns as well you have to be aware of. And both of you mentioned there are cultural issues. Ellie, you mentioned in your writing in the book, you know, going to Bangladesh, for example, and figuring out how female solo travelers there is something not really, you know, common, and so people don't look at it as good. It's also not many non-Western women do this kind of travel. So what advice do you give to other women who want to do this kind of travel alone and maybe have some worries and fears? And just to say, like, every time a woman gets hurt while traveling, especially if alone, it's a front page news everywhere. And I think it terrifies a lot of people from doing that.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and as I was talking a little bit about, you know, I think the first thing for really people to do is to do their reading. So do their research. There are so many resources out there. There are obviously guidebooks, but there are also so many blogs, and there's different government travel advisories as well that you can read. But I think that's the great step, actually reading online. And if you're looking at going somewhere as a solo female traveler, I would try and read an account from a solo female traveler that has been there relatively recently. Every guide obviously is different, but there are some really great resources out there. Obviously my own website, but there are plenty of others that should help give you something of a flavor as to what type of place it is. So some destinations like Bangladesh will not be for everyone, because when you travel somewhere like that, you have to be prepared to adapt a little bit culturally. There are some things which it just won't be okay to do that might be okay at home. So I think getting an initial flavor of what a place is going to be like and what adaptations you might need to make is a good starting point, because different people have a different idea of what is an interesting place to travel. So if you're if you're after somewhere where you can really relax and lay your hair down, Bangladesh probably isn't the place for you. But if you're interested in going off the beaten path and seeing a country which has some of the warmest people that I've ever met, and you're prepared to keep an open mind, then it might be the place for you. So I think that research stage is really important. It also helps to prepare with things like practical things like what to wear. Because one thing that occurred to me is that unfortunately in some places there's still something, I think, of a sort of a blame game when it comes to solo female travel and what female travelers wear. Unfortunately, that's a common question. Like, you know, if a woman is inviting too much attention when she is traveling, people might ask her, well, what was she wearing? And I think, you know, it should be a world where everybody can wear what they want, but unfortunately that often comes back on travelers, or, you know, women in general. So that's something we have to be mindful of. And I think also it's another thing to be aware of is it's really the need to, I think, practice our intuition. As humanity, we've lost a bit our connection with intuition and how to really trust our gut on if a situation is not good, or as opposed to a situation we can relax into. So that's something that takes practice if we're not used to sort of listening to what our guts or intuition is telling us, really.
I can really relate to the last thing you said with the intuition, because since I'm traveling in the rooftop tent and sleeping in the rooftop tent at night, I mean, I'm sleeping normally, but I noticed that, well, when there's animals around, I can sleep. But as soon as a human being is approaching the car, I'm waking up. So that's something that developed since I've been living in the rooftop tent. Yeah.
Wow, that's that's amazing.
Yeah.
You talked about your dad before, and it reminded me that when I landed in Ethiopia, my dad said, "So when you get out of the airport, call me, and when you get on a cab, call me, and even if it's too late, then you should take your phone and say, 'Hello, yes, I'm on my way,' as if you're talking to someone, and and make sure that the cab driver knows that someone is waiting for you." And it's funny, in the beginning I was laughing at him, but when I got there, I actually did those things because I didn't know the place. And I think that one of the things that I would do is, the reason I also went to places where I volunteered or worked is because I could meet other volunteers and I could learn from them and hear their stories and learn a bit more about the local community before I make judgments myself. That's just another thought.
Add to that, Kim, and I'll let you continue your questions. But for anybody who wants to read about your travel, I've written a little bit about it, and in our next week email, we will have some of your stories and your volunteering stories from Zimbabwe in the reading. So if you haven't signed up for our emails, please do. And then for those who want, we actually sent a piece that was written by Ellie last week. And if you haven't received it, let us know and we'll be happy to send it. But can I ask you something, Kim, and maybe I can answer? Tell me if it's true, but I feel when single women travel, the assumption is you are trying to find a boyfriend. And even movies, you know, we were talking about what movie should we pick for this week, and every movie that had in our movie club that had a story was like how a woman traveled alone and found love, and 2 months later she was married and happily ever after, because that's what she was looking for. How do you look at that?
That's so true. I even remember myself coming back from the trip, and that was one of the first questions that my friends had. Like, did you meet someone? And I said, you know, my head wasn't there. I really wasn't looking for that. I was actually looking for a me adventure. You know, I was trying to develop myself, and it's amazing. And especially in Africa, where I felt that the culture, in a way, as a white woman, I couldn't just make another male friend. it automatically was looked upon as, okay, she wants to, be with me, or something here is going to be developing. And it took me some time to understand that after going to dinner with a few guys and not understanding. But it's unfortunately something that I feel a lot of people are still stuck on that mindset. I see Paulina and Ali going like this, so I'm assuming they both agree.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, it's well, actually also when I started my lifestyle journey, I thought, oh, maybe I'm gonna be lonely sometimes, but I realized that I didn't really feel that I need to be around people. That sounds really strange, but sometimes I really enjoy being by myself and just being myself. And I feel like when I was a student, for example, with roommates, I felt the obligation to meet people in the evenings and not sit in front of my TV or whatever. And for the first time, it felt just good to be there somewhere in a forest. And now I'm actually, when I feel like, okay, I need some time for myself, I'm just going somewhere in the woods, staying there for 2 weeks. And afterwards, I appreciate again the company of people. And that's great to find the balance between being all by yourself, reflecting on yourself, who you want to be, where I am right now, all of this. And then after that, I'm ready for people and for exchange and everything. Yeah. So it's not only about relationships with men, but friends in general. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's, there is the perception that often, when we travel alone, we're potentially looking for something more in life. So, transformative travel has become quite a popular concept. And it's not always that when we travel, we're looking for something, but often we use travel as a way to sort of to grow and expand. And it's not necessarily love, but it could be something else. So, I went on a sabbatical for 6 months because I didn't know what to do with my professional life. And I think there are different things, but yeah, definitely when traveling in different cultures and where there are different rules around dating and the relationship between men and women, it can be a bit of a minefield. You also talked at the beginning, Aziz, about, the ways that men can support women traveling solo. I think one of the biggest ways is not assume that solo female travelers are looking to be, flirted with or hit on or whatever it is. So I think we have to develop more of that respect for women to travel by themselves without necessarily assuming that they are lonely or looking for love or whatever it is. That said, I did meet my partner on my travels, so clearly there's some truth to it. But yeah, I think we have a lot of work to do in that area for there to be sort of a level playing field between, a man's ability to travel on his own and a woman's ability to travel on her own, really.
And can you continue on that note and tell us a bit about traveling with a partner, especially someone that I don't know if you met throughout the trip, and then continued traveling together, but I assume that's unique. It's different than dating.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, with traveling with a partner, you get to know them very, very quickly. I think a lot of people assume that in some destinations, particularly that are more different culturally from Europe or North America, it would be easier to travel with a man. Not necessarily. I mean, when you're used to traveling by yourself, it can then be quite, challenging to then compromise on what you want to do and those sorts of things. But I think it's a beautiful experience to get to see how other people react to destinations as well. So it's a great way to get to know people. And there's also so many resources as well online for people to be able to connect up with travel buddies. So if female travelers are looking to do a longer journey by themselves and they just want maybe some companions for a certain leg of the trip, maybe there's a border crossing, which is better if you do it with other people or something like that. There are so many resources to meet people, to connect with other travelers, to do things like that too, which can be nice.
Right. And Paulina, you were talking about traveling with your brother. I wonder what that's like traveling with a sibling for for a while. Do you throw things at him, or or are you guys having fun all the time?
So I need to start a year and a half ago, because actually how all of this started, I moved into the car of my brother, and we tried to live together in the same car with the rooftop tent and it went well for a month. And then I started throwing things at him, and we needed some time for ourselves. I bought my car. I moved in my own car and had my own space. And yeah, as I said, this is 1.5 years ago. And after New Year's, we started the journey. We spent New Year's Eve in Austria, and then we traveled through France and Spain. And yeah, and then we wanted to go back, but then the pandemic came, so we got stuck together. It wasn't planned that long, but I think it was good for us. We always were pretty close, but never that close. But also the distance we have is good. He has his own place, his own kitchen. Well, there's no bathroom, so we don't have any arguments about the bathroom or the kitchen being dirty. So it's, yeah, we are roommates, but without all those conflict zones, basically.
And
And that works pretty well.
questions, one of the questions we got, and if anybody has a question, this is the time to send it. One of the questions we got was if you can show us your house, your car, what do you have with you while you're traveling? Lorraine just asked that. So if you could, I don't know if you can move your it's hard to do so.
I need to be honest, it's a mess right now. But but we have pictures, so maybe we can look at the, yeah. Oh, that's a nice picture also to look at. I wanted to mention that because probably no one will dare to ask the question, what do I do if I don't have a bathroom? You see this shovel over there, and so this is how I'm doing it. I'm living in nature and I'm living along with nature, so I think it's natural. Yeah, so in case anyone had that question. Let's go to a different, yeah, so you saw my first car, and on the left side you see the car I have right now, and that's what it looks like when it's not messy. So you can
What do you have there? What's the content?
yeah, so at the bottom left you can see my battery. And I also got a solar panel, which is really important because I had to charge my laptop and my phone to be able to work. So that was really essential. And then on the right side, you see it says only diesel. And I got a heating system that works, although the engine is not operating. So, and I also got a pipe that I can lead up to my rooftop tent. I'm not sure if we have a picture of that. The pipe that's going up to the tent. So I even have heat. Yeah, there you have it. That's the pipe. And that's a picture from New Year's. Yeah, New Year's Eve. It was really cold. It was freezing. So I used it. And yeah, so that's the setup basically. Maybe we can go back to the picture when you can look inside the car. Yeah, you can see. Oh, I'm not traveling on my own. I have Zara. It's a zebra. She's always with me. When I'm sleeping, she's up in the tent, and when I'm driving, next to me on the seat. So yeah, and you can see it's really basic. I got some space at the bottom where I can put clothes. I got a lot of clothes in this small car. Yeah, and I don't know, there's a ladder in the middle, but I'm not using it anymore because I trained really hard, so now I can climb up on the car. So, but I still have it in case friends visit,
Cool.
which happens quite a lot.
Kim, do you want to pick the next question? It looks like we got a couple.
Sure. I actually remember the day that Pauline called and said she managed to get into her tent without the ladder. This was an exciting time. Taylor is asking, how do you make a living while full-time travel? I remember, Aziz, that's one of the first questions we asked a woman that we met on one of the nights that we went out in Tel Aviv, actually. She said, I'm a full-time traveler, and we said, how? So how do you do it? How do you actually continue working and sustaining yourself? Ellie?
Shall I go first? So I make a living through blogging. So blogging is my full-time job. So through that, we do collaborations with companies, tourism boards. We earn revenue through advertisements on the site and also through affiliate partnerships. And then I also do some freelance work as well. So freelance writing and some consulting for copywriting. So it's definitely very different than having a fixed paycheck coming in each month. And it takes some time to build up as well. But I think we're very lucky in that the world is becoming more and more open to, well, apart from in current times, to working from wherever you want to, kind of with an internet connection. So yeah, you have to be flexible.
Shall I also answer?
Go ahead.
First of all, as I mentioned before, I think Aziz is talking. Oh, no. Okay. What are you doing, Aziz? No, so thanks to Majdi, I could make a living working as a tour manager. I was managing tours remotely. Of course, I was going back and forth, also joining groups in the Holy Land, which I really enjoyed because being a digital nomad is great, but from time to time you need to, of course, see your colleagues and talk to them, but also talk to clients and hear the feedback. And that was really important for me, the going back and forth and really experiencing the tours again and know what I'm doing this for. Because of course there's a physical distance and that helped me keeping up the motivation working for Majdi. And now I started it in Portugal working on a farm, and in return I got food and the place to stay. I didn't need accommodation, I had it myself. So that was a nice arrangement, and I'm planning when I'm going back to Germany to also work on farms, and it's really interesting. It developed out of the current situation because the German government, they set up a platform where farmers can present their farm and say that they need help, because of course there are a lot of people coming into Germany helping with harvesting and everything, especially from Eastern Europe, and all those people cannot come right now. So now everyone is asked to help, and it's even tax-free, so, which is nice these days. So that's what I'm gonna do in the next time. I don't know how long the situation is gonna stay that way, but yeah.
Well, we got another question, and maybe we'll finish questions with that. But how do you constantly think about your safety as a solo woman travelers, and how it impacts your mental health? This idea of continuously thinking about, is this safe, not safe? Does it cause trauma? And then how do you think wealth and class differentiates and impacts women travelers? I know, Ellie, you wrote about this in the book, actually, how women with money are more able to travel than those who not. So do you want to each tackle this?
Yeah, sure. No, I think it's such a great question, both parts of it.
And one more thing she said, I'll just say it.
Yeah.
Because of that, also because of the safety thing financially, so one, is it harder for women to travel than men who don't have to worry about these things? All right.
Yeah, it's such a great question. With the constantly thinking about our safety, I would say that travel is maybe a good way to address that, because after a certain length of traveling, particularly if you're looking to travel for a longer period of time, my experience is that, you know, I'll start off a trip, you know, constantly worrying. I mentioned an example in the book, you know, about listening to directions from people and thinking that they were trying to scam me when actually they were just trying to help me. So those sorts of things, you know, we can let ourselves get quite worried about that. But after a certain point in time, I think we realize that that's maybe not the solution, and we have to learn to trust more of what our bodies are telling us and more of maybe what we know about a culture. And over time, it also becomes easier to, particularly if you're traveling in a set part of the world where, you know, you get to maybe understand more of the local language or more about the local customs. You get to meet more local people who can then help you to understand maybe what's different than what might be at home. So yeah, I do agree that it's a concern, but I also think it's a great way to kind of surrender and let go of that. The second part of the question was about, yeah, privilege. I think that's such an important point, and unfortunately still today it's mostly white middle-class women that are able to travel, because there's such passport inequality firstly in the world. So, you know, if somebody is from a country which doesn't have such a strong passport, it's a nightmare to travel. You have to show bank statements, you have to get letters of reference every time you want to cross the border. So that obviously makes it far more expensive and also far more difficult. So what I've noticed a lot is that now, you know, things are starting to change, or were starting to change before the current situation, and that that women are being able to travel more solo from all countries, but it's still much slower from countries where people maybe don't have the economic means or the passport, or maybe also their families won't let them travel. That's a big problem in patriarchal societies. And I noticed, you know, one thing from a lot of the women that I've spoken to on my travels in India and Bangladesh and countries like that, they're able to go and travel abroad by themselves, but they're not necessarily feeling free enough to explore their own countries because of the way that society judges them. So that's another area where we can really kind of lean on men in our lives to support our decisions. And I think we also kind of have a duty as women to travel more, so that it becomes more accepted and recognized, really. What was the third part of the question, Aziz?
And women differences, safety can cause women to spend more money than men when they travel. Yeah,
I think that's a good point. You know, fortunately, even if you're traveling on a budget, there are female-only dorms in a lot of countries now, so that makes it much easier. So there are some countries where I'd say don't stay in a mixed dorm, but a female-only dorm could be a good option. Likewise, I think if it's your first solo trip somewhere, or if it's a country that you haven't been to before, or you're a bit more concerned about, it's just worth spending the extra money, really, to have at least a good place to stay where you feel secure. So there are, I would say it has some impact, but it's, you know, it's all relative. It's not necessarily that I would say that you can only travel solo if you have a big budget and intend to go on a sort of luxury trip. So hopefully that helps a bit.
Thank you.
I agree 100%. Because
go ahead, Pauline, you want to add something?
Definitely, just to finish it off, concerning the financial security, I don't have very high fixed costs, and you saw the setup of my car. I don't have a lot, but that's all I need, and the feeling is great to see that I can live with all that I got, and I don't need more. And also the thing is that the situations I talked about that were maybe not that positive, but I learned from them. I got really creative when it comes to problem solving, which gives me kind of a feeling of security, because I know whatever is coming, I will find a solution somehow, and that gives me peace. So I stopped worrying about things before they even happen. I'm just dealing with it when the time is there. And I could say that in a lot of situations, when I look back on it, I don't even see it as a problem anymore. It was just a situation. And most of the times I'm even proud of how I solved it, and it makes me even more happy. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, right, Kim, we have to about the photo contest and who's the winner this week. And here we go.
It just looks like a drawing, right?
Yeah,
The whole picture is amazing.
I think the use of light was incredible in this photo. That's what attracted me, because it's a night photo, but in general, in photography, light is one of the most important things, and just a beautiful use of light. The street is full of street art, and it's just captivating shots. So Marwa Jawadi, thank you for sending us this photo, and it's from Marseille, France. And we had so many great photos this week. So it was really hard to choose, and we thought this one is kind of came in the right time, even though the photo was taken 2009 in Mexico, but the kids were ahead of time, ready for having the masks already on. So yeah, and for the winner, we happy, Ellie and I, to give you a copy of the book, Crossing Boundaries, A Traveler's Guide to World Peace. And you have a link also to it on Amazon in our chat. So check it out.
And for next week, we're asking you to send us pictures of sports events. Both of these and I are huge soccer fans of football for non-Americans. And this is a picture that actually Aziz took while he was traveling in the World Cup with my dad. Small coincidence. And just write us again the location of the picture, a short description, and send it to us by Tuesday. We'll announce the winner, and next week on our show, we'll have actually one of our new sponsors for our live stream, CREST, Center for Responsible Travel. And we're going to be talking about the future of travel. And it's something that amazes me while both of you were talking, Ellie and Pauline, about the last question, is that while we're traveling, we feel like the world is open to us more than while we're at home. And problems become non-problems, non-issues. So I think that's very encouraging in a sense for travel, even through a pandemic. So thank you so much for joining us today. I had a great time. I hope our listeners did too. And we hope that you join us again from the road or from wherever you are at the moment.
Yeah, and
thank you.
Pleasure.
Sentiment we had in the book, Ellie, you wrote about it, I wrote about it. It's not where you travel, but rather it's how you travel. So we'll leave you with that thought.
Yes.